who, what, why, when, where. These are things that we need to ask when we get into the nutrition topic. And if you're interested in getting started out here and learning about nutrition and how we teach it, because we make it specific to each person, tailored to each person, because everybody's just a little bit different, click the link above and let us help you out. But when it comes to food, like we hear tons of different things. People are coming in with all different kinds of ideas that they've gotten off the internet. And the thing with the internet that is amazing is that you get to share tons of information. It's absolutely incredible what the internet has become. This huge sharing collective of information that that we all get to add perspective to and take perspective away from. Now the problem with the internet is it is a bunch of answers with no questions. Okay? And we need to ask you a ton of questions. I would much rather have a bunch of questions with no answers than the other way around. When you get a lot of answers, it just gets more confusing. It just gets so confusing. What do? Do I do keto? Do I do the carnivore diet? Do I do vegan? Do I do low carb but not no carb? Do I eat every 2 to 4 hours? That's the one I heard last night. Like, how many liquid calories am I ingesting? Should be probably your question way before you ever get into what diet am I going to choose. What diets really do is they create structure around what you can and cannot eat within that diet, which is probably fine for a short frame of time. But you don't want to discipline yourself forever to that diet. What you want to do is build a lifestyle. And I always like when I put up air quotes. It seems really funny to me, but whatever. If you use air quotes, please comment below and tell me how silly it is to you. But anyway, the thing with nutrition that we have to look at is how does it apply to you? Are you an endomorph? Are you an ectomorph? Are you mesomorph? What is your day-to-day like? What's your stress like? You know, what is your past experience with different nutritional protocols that you have tried to use? You know, what have you been through? Where are you? How old are you? Are you male or are you female? These are all questions that we are going to have to ask. But one of the first ones should be where you're getting your liquid calories. Because this is just one of those things. It's just like we don't put all the bases on calories out here, by the way. Really, if you just focused on what you're eating instead of like what the type of food that you're eating, that's going to take care of probably pretty close to 80 to 90% of the problems that you're having around nutrition. But so calories are not king, but they are definitely a player that we have to consider. So when we're looking at calories, one of the first questions that it can be useful to ask is, where are you getting your liquid calories? Okay, are you getting them from the creamer in your coffee? Are you adding a little bit of coffee to your creamer? Because that's probably a place where it's very easy to overconsume. Are you drinking milk? It's not that we don't want to ever have creamer or milk again. These are just very easy ways to get too many calories. When we study after study after study has shown that an endless bowl, like if we have a bowl and people are eating out of that bowl and it keeps on shoving food back or liquid back in the bottom with more soup, when asked and when surveyed at the end, you know, how much more do you think that you ate or less did you eat than normal? Almost all the people said that they thought they probably ate about the same amount as what was in the bowl as they normally would have, but really they ate pretty close to double. Okay, so we're not very good at judging how much we do eat. So liquid calories are just a very, very easy way that we can create some structure to shrink down the caloric intake a little bit. Okay, so if we're really going from trying to get some fat loss and we're trying to get rolling on some fat loss, we need some success up front, liquid calories can be the way to go, but that depends on you. So until you click that link above and actually come in here and sit down with us, we have no idea if this is going to help you or not. So I'm giving you a lot of answers and not a lot of questions here, but I'm encouraging you to ask questions. Okay, ask questions. Where are my liquid calories coming from? Okay, another one to ask is why do so many people, nutritionists and people on the internet, talk about eating every 2 to 4 hours? Well, this came from some pretty interesting research that when we figured out that when you eat, your metabolism expands. Okay, and for the rest of this, please look at, when I say metabolism, think of it as a unit of measure. Sometimes it's almost as if people are looking at metabolism as if it's like an organ in your body. It's not. It's more like a unit of measure. So think of it that way, as a unit of measure. All right, so when we get into, thanks man, how's it going? All right, so where was I? Okay, so metabolism, when you eat, your metabolism expands, but it only expands to the level of the meal that you have eaten. So if you eat a meal this big, it's going to expand to this much. If you eat a very small meal, it's only going to expand just a tiny little bit. It's a lot like when you get paid. On payday, you're probably going to pay some bills. You might buy something that you do want. You're going to spend more money on payday than you will for the rest of the week, right? When you get a big meal, you're going to expand out how much your body is willing to allocate the food that you are eating. Okay, so eating every 2 to 4 hours, does it stoke your metabolism? Not any more than it would if you would have had 3 big meals versus 6 little meals. All right, so is it better to eat 6 little meals? Well, your insulin sensitivity would say no, which you do want. You want a lot of insulin sensitivity. All right, and your teeth would say no, and your lifestyle would say no. So is it appropriate for every person? Now, there are some people that are going to benefit from eating every 2 to 4 hours. These are typically high, elite level athletes, like world level, world class, trying to go for world championships level athletes. And bodybuilders at that level. And for the most part, what you're doing there is you're trying to give them a small meal throughout the day so that they don't feel full, and because eating full will take away from the training that they're doing, because they're training 3 times a day. They're training morning, noon, night, basically, and so they need a small meal in between there so they never feel full and they still get enough calories to actually go in. Okay, so that's about getting more calories, not getting less. Eating every 2 to 4 hours is not a strategy to eat less food, to eat less categories. It doesn't work. It doesn't, and your life has to revolve around eating every 2 to 4 hours. I mean, it's not conducive to living a happy, healthy life for most of us anyway. Okay, for those top level athletes, yeah, they're probably going to benefit from that. And besides, like most of us, especially if you're male, you should be fasting on some level at least once a week. Okay? Like if you just take one day and you don't eat till 7 p.m. For some females, the research coming back, like females do not tend to benefit from this as well as males do. Males get a ton of benefit out of this. The way that I use it with most females is if I get the inclination that there's just a lot of unconscious eating going on, then we might use fasting as a way to become more self-aware of how often the hand is going for food and shoving it into the mouth without even realizing it. That might be a strategy there. But eating every 2 to 4 hours for most of us is not. Eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, and you're much better off eating breakfast. And when it comes to breakfast, you know, this is another answer without questions, but it apparently very, very clear that eating a heavy protein, a high-fat, high-protein breakfast and a very low-carb breakfast, if not zero-carb breakfast, is beneficial over a high-carb breakfast. High-carb breakfast is just kind of like bogus. Don't do it. Basically, this is one of those things that just crosses all of humans. It's just better to have a high-protein, high-fat breakfast. Now, when you get into lunch and dinner, one of the things that comes up, one of the questions we get asked on a pretty regular basis, which is a great question to ask, is which should be your biggest meal? Well, breakfast should not be your biggest meal. Breakfast should be big enough that it suspends you and gives you the performance that you need until noon when you need to eat again. That should be your smallest meal, lunch, because it needs to do the same thing, and your biggest meal needs to be supper, which you get a little bit more leeway on because that is where cortisol levels are lowest. Morning is when cortisol levels are highest, and that's basically the theory around why it's probably better to have the high-protein, high-fat breakfast. There's some other things that go into that I don't want to talk about here because it would take too long. But the point of this video is to ask questions. The internet is full of answers with no questions. Until we are able to ask you a ton of questions, it is extremely difficult to figure out what you should do. And me personally, I'd rather have a bunch of questions with no answers than a bunch of answers with no questions. Now, the internet is a fantastic space, so I'm giving it a little bit of criticism. It's an awesome place. You get to share tons of perspective, and it's very interesting, but it's a lot of answers with no questions. We need to ask you some questions, and this video is to encourage you to ask questions about what should be your nutritional lifestyle, because you want to do this for the long haul, right? Everything that we learn in Grit Gym around nutrition, it's about doing it for a long period of time. It's about developing a nutritious lifestyle, not going on a short-term diet for a finite period of time. Now, there is a time and a place to do that because we need a little success, but for the most part, we want to be building upon good, healthy, nutritious habits, not just a flash in the pan that is just going to shrink us down to build us back up. All right? So, ask questions. The internet's full of answers without a lot of questions. It's full of answers with basically no questions. In order to help you out, we need to ask a lot of questions. So click the link above and let us help you out.